This is the Black History Month panel, right? We have leaders from all different campaigns here coming together to kind of discuss some of our cultures, you know what I mean, some of the differences that you may see going across the United States, different age groups and things like that, but also the things that we have in common, and just really express ourselves, right? So we have a number of different panel topics where we're just going to kind of just get loose and you know, just let them know what it is. Just something for the people to be entertained and educated at the same time. So the first topic that we have here is not just another Black History Month, right? Because every month you study one book, or you know, you probably don't even do that. You just see a poster or a meme or something like that. Oh, how great it was that MLK did this or Malcolm X did this, and that's it. You know what I mean? So we want to go over some of the history that really did affect us personally, but also some of the modern figures, people in the now times, the people that we seen growing up from the 80s, or you know, maybe some of y'all born in the 90s, all the way up to now. Those type of people that directly impacted you. And we can start wherever y'all want. Whoever wants to jump in first.
All right, well, I'll go ahead and get it started. So as far as, you know, historical figures, you know, one that comes to mind, someone who was, you know, a little bit before my time, but his name definitely still rung bells and still does to this day. For me, it was Bo Jackson.
Okay.
Bo Jackson was huge for me because, you know, I was an athlete growing up, and, you know, like a lot of other young Black kids across America, you know, one of our outs in our head, you know, growing up is, you know, playing sports.
Right, right.
And just like every other kid, you get to a certain age where you have to make a decision on, you know, which sport are you going to focus on, which one are you doing. And for me, you know, I never wanted to pick. You know, I wanted to ball out at everything.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I wanted to prove people I could play in whatever league that I wanted to. And having that example of Bo Jackson, having already done that and crossed over and played pro football and pro baseball, like that was an example already set in stone for me that, like, I'm not talking about craziness, it's achievable. And even though that at the end of the day it wasn't something that, you know, I followed through with, it's still something that stuck to me, you know, still to this day at the job, you know. If I'm in sales, you know, I don't have the mindset of, well, I don't think I could cross over and do customer service because it's not the same. For me, it's like, it doesn't matter. I want to smash all challenges. And that's dope. I can definitely attribute Bo Jackson for that.
So he gave you a sense of diversity at a young age.
Diversity.
Like that you can be. You know what I mean?
Yeah, diversity and the just the confidence and the ability to complete what you set out to complete. You know what I mean? Like,
that's dope.
Writing down goals on a piece of paper it's not just words. Like, you know what I mean? All of it is attainable. You know, it's just all about how you approach it.
I feel it. And I gotta jump back with you on that. You remember that cartoon they had for a little bit with Michael Jordan, Bo Jackson, and Wayne Gretzky?
Yeah, what was it?
And it was like some type of agents or something. They used it.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, nah, that was. You know what I'm saying? If you, oh man, this had to be like mid '90s. You know what I'm saying? But they were like, basically, they was like superheroes or something. Like, they didn't have powers, but they would like go on missions to solve crime. And Michael Jordan had a basketball that would turn into different stuff, and Wayne Gretzky had the you know, the hockey stick or whatever. They was a team, and Bo Jackson had the football and the baseball. So when you said Bo Jackson, that was the first thing that I thought about was, dang, that cartoon was crazy.
Came out in 91.
91, there we go. So yeah, so you know, thank God for technology, right? So when I was young, the first real book that I read was it was Marcus Garvey book. Matter of fact, I read the Nelson Mandela book before that, but the Marcus Garvey book really that took me for a loop, because this dude was so fed up with the way that Black people were being treated that he started financing boats, you know what I'm saying, to get people back to Africa. Like, all right, we out. You know what I'm saying? Y'all don't want us here? I'm gone.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And when I was reading that, it was just like, similar to what you're saying is, when I read that, I was like, I don't really have to put up with anything. You know what I mean? Like, if this man, at the time period that he did, he got the boats, and then the crazy part, they started sabotaging the boats. The same white people that were saying, I'm not trying to get racist, but I'm saying the same white people the racist white people that were saying, go back to Africa, we don't want you here, you're 3/5 of a man and all that, they literally sabotaged the boats when he was trying to leave with the people.
Wow.
And that just was like, it just, you know what I'm saying? I started realizing, like, okay, there's no pleasing this type of an individual. You know what I'm saying? There's no reasoning with someone that's crazy like that. You know what I'm saying? And that goes beyond color. Like, I started to see some people were unreasonable. No matter what it is that you were doing, no matter what type of education that you would, you know what I'm saying, have acquired, there's going to be friction, there's going to be fights, but you don't have to put up with it. You know what I'm saying? And now, eventually, Marcus Garvey ended up getting kicked out of America because he was really Jamaican. And they just, like, excommunicated my guy. They got him up out of here. But the legacy that he had, that was the first time that I seen power outside of, like, street type of, you know what I'm saying? Like, oh, he's a gangster. Like, that was the first time reading that was like, dang, this fool was smart. And he was strong, you know what I'm saying? And he was willing to fight against any opponent, you know? So that kind of set the tone for me, like, oh, you can be, there's something more than what you see around you. You know what I mean?
You can do more to it. I think AI for me was like, that was my modern figure. It didn't register to me until I started losing things because of my attitude or because of not making a JV squad or, you know, like kind of those same footsteps that Allen Iverson went through, you know, until I think one of my coaches at the Boys and Girls Club, because Boys and Girls Club raised me, so they was, you know, one of them just told me like, hey, you better shapen up. You know, you gotta stop talking back. You gotta, you know, you're black, you're a woman, you know, you're a lesbian. You got to make sure that you know, you come in there right. And I think that was like 14, 15, you know? And that's when I went to college because of that man, you know? And, you know, my mom, she really didn't make a lot of money, so he kind of taught me how to, like, apply for college, how to get financial aid, you know? So I think AI for me was like, that was my modern figure.
Yeah.
Especially, yeah.
I feel that.
For sure.
I feel that. Ebony. Come on, give us something. History, modern figure.
History. See, as a little girl, you know, growing up in a house full of women, I always looked up to like the women that my mom would play songs, right? My mom would play all their songs. And just one person that always stuck out to me was Mary J. Blige, right? So like to this day, I love Mary J. Blige. And you know, like her music, it's not like it's just like, you know, focusing on just like one thing. It's like she sings about sharing love, you know, she sings how to be strong, like she sings about stories that, you know, a lot of people have been through and, you know, just don't know how to deal with it. Like she just touched on a lot of, you know, touchy places. So, she's like somebody that I always looked up to as a little girl. Even still now, look at her. She still looks like she looked when I was a little girl. Like, you know, she's in shape. Yeah, she's in shape.
I was gonna say, I'm proud of her. She's doing her thing with her acting. She got longevity.
The acting is going real good.
Definitely.
And she still looked good. You know, she went through a divorce and it was like all on like public and social media and everything. Right. And you know, she got through that and she still managed to keep on going with whatever she got going, singing about the same stuff she's been singing about, but just sounding even better and looking even better. So that's something I looked up to, and I still do. To this day, I still listen to her song, Clean Up My House. Make her little songs give me motivation sometimes.
All the windows open, you know, all the doors open.
You be doing the dance to them?
All of them. She know how to do a couple dances. I don't even know how to do.
Right? She used to get down.
We're going to say that.
What you learned when you was a kid.
We don't know that I'm going to let you do that. Because you know about Mary.
Hey, Mary, man, when she came back in them with the boots days, you know, with the smoking in the back. Man, I know about Mary.
Yeah, everybody knows about Mary.
What's going on? And damn, Mary took me through some lives.
That's what I'm saying.
Indeed.
Her music,
I can show you what grade I was in when Mary album, you know what I'm saying? She was going down, I was like in the 8th. I ain't gonna say what grade I was in. I was going down with her.
Right.
But just left me, first little, you know. Well, you know, for me, I picked Cicely Tyson. Rest her soul. Big ups to her. She was 95. And not really saying like she inspired me growing up, but when you see the longevity, you watch just about every film that she was in. And to me, Cicely Tyson, if you think about where she came through every generation from black slavery, from them burning things down to everything that we read about, even till modern day. She lived to 2021. And I mean, she's an iconic figure that just is remarkable. But most of all, she reminds me of my grandmother, who was also born back. My grandmother passed last year. She would have been 97 this year. So she made it through the same time frame as my grandmother, watching Malcolm X, watching Martin Luther King, watching Mary J. Blige, watching computers, watching digital technology, watching everything that we couldn't even fathom. One lady has it all in her body, in her soul. And I just thought that was remarkable that she even was able to live until her last recordings and her videos and still was a viable person. Like, she was just held by goodness, you know what I'm saying? So Cicely Tyson, look her up, watch a movie, but she go back all the way to 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, and Tyler Perry especially brought her back in 2020. Like, he saw her legacy and really put her to work, and I just think like he might have saw, but in her end, she was still usable. She didn't die out. And it's just like my grandmother, she fought to the very end, and she saw it to the very end in her full right and conscious mind, and that's just how I want to be when I grow up. So that's like my role models and figures, the elders that just are still here. To me, it's just like, I know sometimes I wake up and I be like, how are we gonna make it? You know, you look at our world around us, and to me, it's a reminder, Cicely Tyson, Annie Mickles, which is my grandmother, that we can make it through every generation. You just gotta have that positive mindset. Think like Cicely, think like your elders, stay rooted, stay grounded. So for me, my childhood is based on just, like history, and living history,
So let's transition from that into the modern, because you mentioned like to make it now, right? So Cicely is, when she was 95, rest in peace.
Yeah.
So she comes from a completely different mindset than some of our more modern icons do, right? But who's taking that place? Who do you feel like is picking up those type of mantles? Who's becoming the next? Because Morgan Freeman, them type of people that just been around forever, right? And still look the same.
Right.
Who's becoming that next that? You know what I'm saying? Like, who do you feel like is that?
So I kind of think it's happening behind the cameras at this point. You got Ryan Coogler, who came out with Fruitvale Station, which highlights injustice going on in the African American community out there on the West Coast in Oakland, California. Then you fast forward a few years and he drops one of the most successful box office hits of all time, regardless of race or color, Black Panther, which in result of that, that has set up a positive example for so many young Black kids moving forward that we didn't have growing up.
Right, absolutely.
Even if you look at some iconic films that were big when we were growing up, like New Jack City, or
absolutely. Absolutely.
Like the role model or the influence of all these movies are actually very negative,
Oh yeah.
And it's become a connotation or almost like a stereotype of our culture as a whole.
Absolutely.
And that's why people associate Black with and drugs and this, that, and the third. And I just think that, man, it's been a long time coming, but I think it's really amazing what he was able to accomplish there. Iconic actors and actresses in that film as well, man. It just sets an example on so many levels of what we're able to accomplish.
Right.
That the box that we're born in doesn't exist.
I feel that, and that's a really important fact, because just in general, we're seeing people have more creative control in like making art, right? Whereas before, you just had to try to get a role. You know what I'm saying? Like you had to go all the way back, step and fetch in to Portier, all that, like Bill Cosby, Sidney Poitier. Yeah. These type of people just had to fight to get a role. You know what I mean? To where it started to trickle down, and even people that did show kind of negative depictions, the John Singletons. You know what I'm saying? The Hughes brothers, these individuals, Spike Lee, going into now, like, the creative control to create something for the Marvel Universe, like, that's big box office money, like you were saying, with the Black Panther stuff, and Jordan Peele doing his thing, just jumping to different things. Like, I feel like maybe, that's a really good point of watching where we're going as the creators rather than just taking it in. You know what I mean?
We're now in a position where we have the ability to control what is being projected about our culture on a large scale.
Definitely.
It's very important. It's very important. History is written by the victor. So a lot of our history is not written in the best light. But for us to have the ability to have a little bit of influence on leaving our own mark behind, I think is very important for the preservation of our culture, for sure.
Dope. Dope. Anybody else have any like modern people that they're watching grow and they feel like, okay, this person could potentially be like, 'cause you know, like even watching like a Jay-Z, right? Like where he went from to where he's at now. Like who would have ever imagined Jay-Z, so dope, would have dreads and be on some like super peaceful
Ice Cube
fight, right? Cube going from like, you know what I'm saying? Like where he went from America's Most Wanted to now, are you there yet? You know what I'm saying? Who do you feel like has that that ability to transition, or you know what I'm saying, to kind of take like that next step, you know what I mean, of growth? That's younger.
I think I like the Ice Cube, and I want to say Meek Mills too. Like he's doing the reform of like the jail,
Prison reform, yeah.
He's also linked up with Jay-Z as well.
Right.
So, I mean, how much money he's putting into like each community to like reset and reform things, I think is amazing. And he's not even 30 yet. He's 28. So,
Right.
yeah.
Well, we've seen a lot of these young cats die either from drugs or, you know what I'm saying, getting murdered in the streets. A lot of these young artists that have captured the hearts of, you know what I'm saying, their generation, you know what I mean? But we're also seeing some of those guys change up. Like, I'm speaking specifically of rappers, really.
You know what I mean? The first one that comes to my mind, you know.
Oh, yeah.
Goes from,
Black Bank?
Yeah, you know.
Yeah.
Goes from, you know, running the streets and selling gangster rap records and, you know, banking on the stereotype to turning around and opening businesses and reaching out to, you know, young black youth and, you know, helping them to open up businesses and taking these negative labels or these negative affiliations such as gangs and turning those into LLCs, which is now, you know, a recognized licensed company, which is turning profit, which is building credibility, you know. Yeah, we got to have a little bit more presence when it comes to the infrastructure of the United States in order for us to actually ever be a part of the game, you know.
Right. That's a fact. That's a fact. All right, but we're going to jump into this next one. The topic phrase for this, entertainment and expression. We know that's a humongous thing in black culture. Music, film, fashion. We've set the trends and we've set the standards in this as long as we've been here, you know what I'm saying, in these areas. And so we're going to start with Sam, jumping off into music, film, and fashion expression. How has that played a role in your life? How is that influencing you? And you know?
Huge, man. I think I'm going to take a little bit different approach on this topic. Growing up biracial, right, there was always a little seed of doubt in my mind as far as like, how black am I, and you know that type of that uncertainty, right? But one thing that my mom and my dad used to do when I was growing up was they used to watch Soul Train like all the time. Like Soul Train used to be on all the time, man. And I would watch the Soul Train line, you know what I'm saying, at the end of the episode growing up. And you would see a dark brother come down, and he's pop locking, and he's doing his thing. And then you see a light skinned brother come down, and he's jigging and getting his thing. And it's like this whole, like everyone is just cheering everyone on, man. And like witnessing things like that kind of really cemented in my mind that like, man, no matter how different any of us look, or like what part of the world we all come from, like there's a uniqueness that we all share, man. And one of those ways that it's expressed is through music. And to divulge from that, you know, one of the big like historical music figures in my life that really kind of set a tone for me was Parliament. You know, my family was really into funk, and you know, funk has so many elements and so many different types of music, and so many types of music that came after it took so much from it. Like it kind of like it was one of the first things that kind of like clicked in my head. Like, oh man, like we're pioneers, man, and the way we do things, it has a funky twang to it that, you know, everyone in the world is going to try to mimic, man, but like no one can put their finger on it, like, and that's a proud point of my culture for me.
I feel that. That's a beautiful thing. Okay, so music for me, and I just learned some of this stuff, even though I kind of knew it in my spirit, but I just learned some of this stuff from somebody who's like a music history major, right? And so I started looking into the charts myself, and they was explaining to me like how basically Black Pain invented American music. You know what I'm saying? Like in every aspect, we basically created it off of the pain that we was going through. From Negro spirituals down to blues music, which it turned into rock and went into jazz. You know what I'm saying? From blues, we get this R&B. You know what I'm saying? We get this hip hop from a mixture of all these things, and the lack of the ability to really get a hold of musical instruments. So now we sampling, now we doing this and that in order to keep things going, to stay alive. You know what I'm saying? And so like when I started looking at it from that point, you know, people will demonize the hip hop culture and say everything we're saying is just terrible and negative, you know what I'm saying, and that type of thing. But it's like, it's always been terrible and negative, and we've always been expressing from a place of dealing with the hardships of society, whether it's gangs, which is just, that's more modern, but like, you go back to jazz, blues, there was a lot of heroin, it was dealing with wars, it was dealing with segregation, it was dealing with slavery, if you go all the way back. Like, there's always this overwhelming, like, adversity for black culture, and it's expressed through the music. You know what I'm saying? You listen to a Pac, or you listen to a NBA Youngboy, it's there. You know what I'm saying? Like, you can hear it, it's there. And so, like, for me, I make music, you know what I mean? So, like, for me, that's always been something that I've tried to express as my, whatever I learned, whatever personal experience I'm gonna do, I've always tried to express that in the hopes that somebody can connect with it or grow from it. And I think that, I mean, we've taught America, like, you know what I'm saying, so much through music and dance, you know? So that's just my experience, like, with music and expression. It helped me grow as a person, and everybody that I know, you know?
I got a question. How you think music affects this new generation? Because as you pose that question, I feel like ain't none of today's music birthed out of pain, feeling, emotion, love, heartache. I don't even know what half of them saying.
I think
Right, and your parents didn't know what the music you was listening to was saying, right?
There's a generational gap too, you know, kind of like you was explaining, you know, we come from the crack era, and, you know, a lot of our parents weren't around due to, you know, one circumstance or the other. Not all of them were on drugs, you know. Some of them struggled with, you know, in and out of jail. You know, some of them were, you know, in the military. Some of us had parents who, the other parent wanted to be there, but, you know, the other one didn't allow it, you know, whatever the case may be. But I think there's, you know, as weird as it sounds, there's a big difference of the generation that grew up without a father and the generation that grew up with the internet as their father.
I have both their parents.
Come on.
You know what I mean? You know, we come from especially the men, you know, we come from a time period where, like, you didn't express your emotions, because, you know, if your dad was around, that's what he did, and, you know, you followed his lead. But if he wasn't around, like, it was like, well, damn, if my own boss doesn't care enough to be around and what I'm going through, like, why would anyone else? Therefore, you bury it here. And then this internet age, you know, they might not have their mom or their dad or their brother to hear them out, so they'll post a blog and let the entire world comment on how they're feeling. You know what I mean? And,
that's
like,
their expression.
And I think that, and that's their expression, but that also opens you up to criticisms that you won't receive if you're like us, keeping it all right here. You know what I mean? And I think there's pros and cons. And I'm not saying one generation is doing it better than the other. No, I think it has its pros and cons, and I think we see it kind of manifest in the music a little bit.
Absolutely.
So that's what, kind of touch on what Nick said. I feel what she said, you know, in raps of, like, the new generation see the music, you know, it touched on drugs or, you know, the hustling or, you know what I'm saying, or your parents weren't home or whatever. You had that emotion or pain, but it didn't, like, necessarily tell us, like, hey, you can just pop 9,000 pills and you can have 10 tattoos on your face and you can be relevant and actually go into this business world, you know, so.
Yeah, we come from a place, the only way to be relevant was to get that paper.
Exactly.
Right, that's it.
And I think that's the difference between the music, right? Like, it still kind of taught us a piece of moral, right? Like a piece of dignity versus, like, the music now. It's just like, okay, you can be very expressive and you can wear and do what you want, but you got to go to social media to make $1 million. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, it's kind of a different plateau. So I definitely understand what you were saying in raps of that, you know?
Absolutely.
Music's different. Music's different.
No, that's definitely true, but I feel like each generation has that time, right? Like going into skinny jeans.
That was,
like,
I was about to say, like,
that's
me looking at some of the skinny jeans, so it's unacceptable for me. But when I look around and I see your peers, like that's what y'all on. So it's like
it is what it is.
It's like you gotta, you're not gonna catch me wearing.
Right.
But that's okay.
If you want to wear it.
That's okay.
And we won't understand that, and that's okay. Like I'm not finna get 7 tattoos on my face for no reason.
Exactly.
But at the same time, when we were younger, there's things we was doing that our parents was looking at us like,
why are you wearing
why are your overalls all backwards?
Why aren't you tying your shoes?
Because I listened to Crisscross when I was a kid, right? You got on backwards clothes. Your parents looking at you like you lost.
I don't know if y'all did this in Philly, but we used to like when you have like the ankle cut shoes on, you used to like fold your sock, but blow your heel. You know what I'm saying? Like,
for sure.
That
was before the bully socks, you know, used to come out.
Or remember we used to have we used to get the belt buckle with the initial on there with the with the gangster letters on there.
Well, that was more the essays though. We didn't have to be wearing that, but they used to have that little hood
with the initial, where you get your boyfriend initial, your girlfriend.
Oh, look at you!
You got that extra part of the glove just hanging. Wow.
My belt to stay, so I don't have like mine.
Match it up with the chucks.
You pull it too tight, it just come loose. I don't know.
I feel that. All right, so let's jump into these subcultures and the backgrounds, because we kind of went there, right? Like you just was explaining kind of the fashion of where you was from, and, you know about that, right? And then me and you only had one belt. So we was in our own land because we only had one belt. We didn't have all that.
Black and brown.
You had to lock it up. Like slide the lock. You better stay. I remember it.
And it would just loosen up.
Yeah. That's fucking pants for
y'all remember the little breaded like one? And
don't do the rubber belt. Don't.
You ain't never had one of those cheap joints?
And like it came with the buckles.
No, the initials. This was like a fake leather belt. And it was
and all of them.
it didn't actually have holes. You just put it
Anywhere for the skinny
joint did not work. Yeah, I was bony. I was like
That's
Snoop.
what's always turned gray.
You know why you had
Yeah, them
that.
joints was terrible.
Skinny kids could never find your mom.
Yeah, we couldn't. Right, she had
You got every night.
You could pull it all the way out. Right. We're gonna pass this down if it lasts. But yeah, with the subcultures in the background, right? Sam, you've been all over the place. You know what I'm saying? You've lived all over the place. We got our East Coaster over here, Jersey in the house, right?
My subculture is more so. So okay, I'm Puerto Rican and black, right? Those are my two different cultures in the household. But as being Puerto Rican, we're still African descent, right? So it was kind of the same, but it wasn't. It's the different. You know, you walk into a black household, you know, you don't just hug and kiss or whatever. You know, you may say, hey, you know, auntie or whatever. Yeah, right. So it was definitely a different culture coming into my mom's house or coming into my grandmother's house.
Right.
And just like it was definitely different rules too. Like I could go outside with my Spanish grandmom and not come home until 7:30. But if I was with my black grandmother, I had to be home before the street lights. And that was just like a general rule. Unless you was going to the black, you know, the Boys and Girls Club, then you know you wasn't safe. You had to come home. So for me, it was like Spanish, but we were still Africans, still black. Yeah, for sure.
Hey, Junior, give it to him.
I was feeling it because I feel like I've been, you know, in the midst of Puerto Rican cultures, and although we are African descent, the mindset or even the strictness or how they get at the kids, it'd be totally different, or even just the customary rules. Like, no, y'all good, black streets, come home, eat dinner, go back. Where, like she said, it's just, you know, profound to hear, because and we all under the same cultural color belt, per se. Very put it, you know, under, but it is still differences in household morals, ethics, upbringings. You know, pretty interesting. Time you came on, bro?
You know, it's time for me to come home.
Yeah. What time did you have to come on?
Oh, what time did I have to come home?
Street life.
Man, so again, like I said, and you know, Sinclair said in the intro, I've lived all over, so that answer differs depending on where I was at.
Right.
So like I said, I was born in Kentucky, and that's where the majority of my family is from. So you know, when I'm back home in Kentucky, there is no curfew. You know, everyone's doors are always unlocked. You know, if it's a school night and I decide to come home at 3 o'clock in the morning, as long as I got my butt up for school the next morning, like there's no issue, there's no problem. You know, half the town is my family. The other half is, you know, people who grew up with my family. You know what I mean? It's generational. So there's really no fear, that modern fear that you have in the city, right? But then you take that, I moved from Kentucky to New York, completely different ballgame, and I lived in New York City and I also lived upstate in the sticks. So it's like, that's 2 more experiences right there, living in the city, at that age, I was never allowed out of my mother's sight, you know what I mean? And the only time that I could maneuver without an adult was like I could sit on the stoop. I could sit on that stoop, and I could go as far as my sidewalk to the street. Like as soon as I put my toe in the street, someone looking through the window. You know what I'm saying? Which, to be honest, I wasn't hyper aware at the time because I'm such a kid. Like I lived in an Italian neighborhood when I was living in New York, and I didn't see any of those kids as threats or anything like that. Yeah, they might run their mouth a little bit, whatever the case may be. But like, I never felt like I was in danger. But now, like being older and having people that after I moved away, grew up out there, I understand that like it was a very volatile situation. And looking back, it's that classic story. Looking back and parents were always on you about this, or there was overprotective here, or this, that, and the third, and it's usually always for a pretty good reason. But then fast forward, I moved out to Las Vegas. I moved to Vegas on my 7th birthday, and no one in my family has ever been east of or west of the Mississippi River. So it's a complete culture shock to me. The city was completely different than living in a city on the East Coast. Majority of the kids I was going to school with were, Mexican or came from some sort of Hispanic descent. I never really dealt with that before. We had Puerto Ricans in New York, but from where I lived at, they weren't even over there. You know what I mean? So like, it was a huge culture shock. You know what I mean? And like, I moved out here in '95, so West Coast is on full tilt. It's
right.
You know what I mean? Like Tupac is just about to die. You know what I mean? Like, Death Row Records is on top of the world. You know what I mean? Like everybody's gang banged out. You know what I'm saying? And don't get me wrong. In New York, you got corners, you got blocks. You know what I'm saying? You got little crews and stuff like that. But at that time, there was no like, oh, it's a set of 40 Bloods over here and 20 Crips over here, and depending on which direction on each street you're going, you gotta, like, it wasn't like that. It was like, like me, when we lived in Harlem for a little bit, like 137th and Lenox, like we knew that we was good from 137 to 139. Beyond that, 140 and beyond, and 136 and beyond that way, we was in a danger zone. We know that, you know what I mean? Like, and out here it was different. It was different, you know what I mean? And yeah, man, it was different. Like, it's kind of weird. I moved around so much, and like I said, being biracial, I personally didn't get a chance to grow up with a lot of people that look like me. Like when I moved to the West Coast, we moved originally on the east side of Las Vegas, and then the north side. But I was always surrounded by my Mexican brothers and sisters. I grew up in a Mexican home, and I got put out of my house growing up. You know what I mean? So like, honestly, that was a wonderful experience of another subculture. That wasn't too different from ours, but definitely had a lot to offer. Family, community, respect, loyalty. You know what I mean? It was good.
That's dope. Anybody else want to chime in on that?
I just wanted to kind of like relate to how you guys, how we talk about basically different rules in different type of houses. So I got an auntie, and she's married to a Hispanic, right? So we would go to her house every summer. But I would always want to go to her house because she would let us play outside as long as we wanted to, as long as we were together. She would she would let the kids do whatever we wanted, and we kind of like, we had like a certain respect for it, to where like we were so like, okay, I don't want her to be disappointed in me because she's so sweet, or because she's so nice, or because she trusts us so much, that we would like really abide by her rules and stuff. Versus being at home, mom like, you better sit your butt down, or don't leave this gate. It's like, leave anyway, like So it is a lot different. Like it's a lot more like nurturing, like that, like, what I'm saying. Versus houses that I grew up in, everybody fussing all day, and one got in trouble, everybody got in trouble. Like, what I'm saying? And it was like, yeah, y'all can go outside, but don't go past this street, or don't go past that street, versus being an auntie. She's like, as long as you guys stick together, make sure you watch your brother, make sure you watch your cousin, make sure y'all good. It was like, a lot different though. So,
That's deep. That's deep. All right, let's jump into this last one, development and business, right? What are we doing?
On a personal level?
On a personal level, or when if you're looking towards the future of us as a people group, like we talked about Killer Mike, the whole black banking situation, however you want to get at it.
I mean, for me, right now, on a personal level, I'm finally enrolled back in school and knocked out these last 2 years, get my business degree. I'm looking at opening up some liquor stores and getting a brand going where not only am I able to, secure myself financially, but I'll be able to provide employment, not just for people from our community, but, have that option to be able to, hire people from our community and to set an example that, regardless of your skin color, your background, where you've been or where you're trying to go, this is a venture that's, is doable. So I think a lot of us, the era that we grew up in, like, man, like opening a business, you say something like that, and everyone's immediate reaction is,
right,
like, yeah, and like 90% of people want to do it all the way up until the point where it's time to like start doing it. You know what I mean? And I think that's like it's a taboo. You know what I mean? And like I think that we just, as we see more examples of black entrepreneurs being successful, this is opening more doors mentally for us than actual in the physical world. You know what I mean? Because at the end of the day, when it comes to the business world, I think we all are old enough to realize that like money talks. You know what I mean? Like if you got the money to get something done, you can get it done.
Right,
you know what I mean?
right.
But I think we as a people need to start attacking that financial responsibility in such a way where we're able to not just set ourselves up for this life, but generations moving forward.
I feel that. As far as what are we doing, as a people group, I really feel like we need to step into the tech industries. I think everybody that has done that has been really successful. A lot of our moguls that are going from music or film are going into those tech spaces, like Nas, Chameleonaire did it a long time ago. A lot of these guys, Master P got into NASA like almost 15 years ago. And so getting into that technology space really gets us ahead of the curve, because we were kind of behind the curve as a people when it was like, acting versus directing. So when Spike Lee came out, it was like, it's a Spike Lee joint. You know what I'm saying? He did the Malcolm X, he did so many dope movies, but he was rare. You know what I'm saying? Just like Tyler Perry has his own, his whole own production joint. He like Steven Spielberg level. You know what I'm saying? Where it's like, we're gonna shoot the right. Can't nobody stop you, right? So he's doing films and stuff like that. But I think really catching.
Okay. Taylor came from just acting in that one show. What was that one movie? She was just
the Tyler Perry joint?
Yeah. Now look at her. She's making music, but dope music.
Fire
music.
Music.
Her beautiful family with
she's
what's
so
his name?
underrated.
Her husband?
Iman.
Mm-hmm. They got some beautiful kids, and she doing her acting thing, and she's doing real good. She started off just being like, just.
They gave her an inch.
Mm-hmm. She took it, and her voice is like, it gives you chills. Like, you know what I mean? Her voice is like amazing. Have you listened to her? Tiana,
She's big into fashion too.
You know what I mean?
She
signed with Kanye.
Yeah. Well,
her last album came out under Good Music, right?
Yeah.
All right, and it was good.
But yeah, her swag style got like, you see other people like, where you get that from? They dressed like Tiana.
Right,
like,
that's fact. She took the Rihanna spot in my opinion.
Right.
How do we get ahead, like on the back end of that?
Generational wealth and security. If we're having kids that are growing up of color, that are growing up in households where they don't have to worry about, hey, when I'm 18 and get put out, how am I gonna make this work?
Right.
You know what I mean? They can shed that fear and that worry and just apply that towards whatever that next venture is. Like it's like instead of like a kid saying, hey man, like I gotta get straight A's all the way through school so that I can get into school, and then once they get there, you know what I'm saying, they do nothing with it. Like, you know what I mean? Like the reason that most other people don't do nothing with it is because they put so much pressure on themselves just to get there that once they got there, like that was so far beyond the scope that they failed. You know what I mean? Like we need to have it in our kids' head that, like, you know, higher education is a given. Like, it's not a Hail Mary, it's not a prayer, it's an expectation.
Right.
You know what I mean? And that way, you're not focusing on what it takes to get there, but, you know what I mean, doing what you got to do, and then when you get there, that's where you blossom. I think a lot of us peak too soon, you know what I mean, because we got too much on our plate, and there's just too much going on. And I think we need to set up that security blanket for these children to be able to fall in love with learning and knowledge and wanting to want more, opposed to how am I gonna, you know, pay next month's rent.
Do the easy way.
Right.
I want to touch on what you said, like going out before our peak is too soon. I think teaching emotional intelligence at home,
For sure.
you know what I'm saying, is something that's super vital for our culture. Because we can do the work, right? We can perform it, we can do it better than the next. But how do we sit at that table with the next CEO or that's not of color, right? That, you know, you may sit in a room and be like, man, I think he can talk better than me, or I think he dresses better than me, or maybe he fits the part. How do we feel just as vulnerably comfortable just as he or she does, you know? And that's EI, emotional intelligence. Like, we've got to be able to preach that to these youth.
I feel that.
Speaking that, giving them a book, right? How did this person go through those endeavors? You know what I'm saying? And I think that's something that, like, I teach to any youth that comes into me is, like, you gotta know. You gotta know how to sit. You gotta know how to be able to take if somebody tells you to do something, it's not just they're telling you this may get you to your next step.
Right. I feel like both of you guys' answers kind of go together, because it's like you're saying, like, we have to create stable homes, right, for these kids to be able to grow up healthy enough to look past the bare minimum, right? Like, I just gotta make it into college. Like, that's not gonna do it.
That's not all.
You know what I'm saying? I gotta become the best at this. That's just a little piece.
I'm not gonna lie, when I got on campus, I made it. You know
Right,
what I'm saying?
you.
I'm like,
Woohoo! Never thought this was gonna come,
Right.
and then after that, it was like, now what? You know, like,
Facts.
I wasn't ready for that reality. You know what I mean? I played it in my head so many times that as soon as I walked on campus through my hands, that was the end of the movie.
That was the finish line.
That was the end of the movie. You know?
And that usually is the end of the movie. In the movie,
You know what
right?
I'm saying? Like,
The nigga made it out the hood.
they sent me up.
The movie go off. Yeah, that's true.
The part they don't show is when the movie's over and you don't pass the semester, you gotta go right back.
That's deep. Yeah, so the EI starts with the parents, and that being poured into the next generation, right? A way to deal with it, because whether it was rage in the 90s, in the 2000s, right?
Or depression.
in the 2000s and 10s and the 2020s, we're not dealing with our emotions properly. You know what I'm saying? You shoot somebody or you shoot something up.
Yeah.
Basically, because in the 70s, the 60s,
Listening to music.
you seen Ray? They was getting loose off that heroin. I'm just being real. It just keeps going. It's a vicious cycle of not being able to deal with our emotions.
It's always something.
Yeah, it is. So moving forward.
Now that you spoke, you know, I'm the middleman.
Let's
know
go.
what I'm saying? I come to empower my people.
Let's get it.
In 2021, recognizing what we lack as black people, as a culture of people, our mindset. So I went back to school to actually obtain my degree in mental health and life coaching, with an emphasis in adolescence, because it's not the children, it's the parents that lack the knowledge. So if you start with teaching the children how to be strong in the home and empower them to be young kings and queens, and realize you can do the same as your neighbor, culturally, colored, ethically, whatever, you can do the same. And right now we have the same opportunities, we just don't take advantage. So I'm the voice to show everyone around me, not just our kids, but all younger kids that right now, that's why I say, what's the substance behind music? What does it give them? What does it give them hope to look for, aspire to do, besides get more money? And generational wealth is not having or attaining money. It's passing your wealth. And how do you get wealth? What's wealth? It's not money. It's the collection of having more of what you need than the resources that's required. Meaning, I could pass my wealth down to you. I could be a millionaire, but when you spend $2 million, you have no wealth. You have no substance, and you have nothing that's continuing to grow to give to someone else. That's what wealth is, and generational wealth means we hand it down from me to you to my kids. So now that you guys speak of what's required in the homes, that was my process. 20 and 20, COVID 2020, we call it crown season right now. Just, you know, elevating our mindsets. The world suppresses us enough. but really it's only if you accept it. So we can overcome if someone else speaks the opposite. It's all about what you speak into the environment. If you say the opposite besides what someone else tells you, then you have the means to flourish, create online businesses. There's so much out here off nothing, off breathing. I did a TikTok and I'm a millionaire. I colored my hair purple and made a video about it, and I have money. But also how to think beyond just attaining money and spending money. Like you say, how to become the TikTok CEO. How to then take the things that we put so much time senselessly into and learn the investment ends behind it. How does TikTok make money? Well, let's go hit that market. Let's go hit the real estate market. Let's go learn about our options and how we can continue to flourish. And not just that, let's go get Imayas and the babies that really, they're intelligent. If they can learn to go from a computer-based, from a book-based system to overnight being forced to a full electronics, opening apps, PDFs, Zoom meetings, what makes you think that these kids can't learn stocks, mental capacity, emotional intelligence? How they formulate out of nothing anyway. So that's my goal right now, and that's what I'm doing. I'm gonna attain my degree, but I'm hands-on with my life experiences, and then unfortunately without education, people don't take you seriously. So I'm gonna empower myself, and I'm gonna use both, but most of all, I'm gonna reach based on my interactions, my day-to-day, not just based on knowledge and what I know, but how I actually can talk to a Bree, talk to a Sinclair, let's grow, let's develop. Where you weak, you got the thought, but I'm gonna pump the empowerment into you, so now that your thought is sustained by an actual hope, a dream, and now you can execute, and that's all it takes. That's to believe in the kids, the youth, the future, and ourselves. And we good as black people. We just gotta band together as a unit, not hoarding and not doing things just to make money that isn't becoming of our culture. I see so much loose booty and booty songs and city girls, and that's why I asked about the music. What's the substance? I hear your pain, but you kind of choosing a lot of these things now. You was a wholesome girl that went to private school just like me. Just like I chose to sold drugs, and I didn't have to do the things that we have to do now culturally. We were broken from those bondages. So that's why I like, does the music really tattoo? Yeah, you could be whoever the hell you want to be. I would have never fathomed being able to look like this, dress like this, and someone accept me or put me on camera or hear my voice. So it's a good freedom, but it's also where are we headed with that freedom? What are we doing with the freedoms that we have? Are we still turning our people downwards? It's still feeding you the crack pipe through music. You still killing our mental. You still, and so I'm just, it's about empowerment. The same way I speak a voice, I could write this dope ass, I could write this dope track, and I could then push it and empower through my music, through my pain. It could be power. It doesn't have to be suppression anymore, and I'm ready to rise above all that and teach even the rappers. Let's rap about something that these kids can pick up a book, man. Influential. Y'all not influencing. These kids know how to Millie Wop and Uzi Vert and can't spell.
Yeah.
Sorry. Where's our culture? Where's our subculture? And where's the people leading these cultures? Whether it's artists, photography, musicians, filmmakers. It's good to see because I'm from Wakanda. You feel me? If you watch the movie, you understand. But it gave me empowerment of collectiveness, right? Everybody in this group is from Wakanda now because of the movie.
I feel what you're saying, though, and I feel like exactly what you said as far as putting the steps to it. Because that's what we really end up always missing, is the steps. Right? Like, we have amazing speakers in the black community. We know how to express,
honestly,
but to attack the situation.
At the end of the day, man, we got to stop relying so much on external sources.
We got it ourselves.
Like, if there's one thing I could say to, young black kids growing up right now, man, is hold yourself accountable.
Facts.
Don't wait for someone to come and tell you that you're doing wrong, Don't wait for someone to show you how to do something the right way. We are all born innately knowing the difference between right and wrong. Use your common sense, man. Don't be afraid to flex that brain muscle. One of the issues in our culture is it's kind of shameful to be smart sometimes, right? You got to get past that.
Not even that though. It's kind of shameful because your leader or the person next to you is the same example, but they're 20 years older than you. No one knows no more. No one knows like out of order. Let's correct this. So if like the mama not saying like how's a young or a teen or upcoming person with the mentality like supposed to be like yo this is out of order, but now culturally. 14-year-olds, it's okay to smoke weed in their mama's house and bring girlfriends home to sex. It's just no more. No way over here.
But again, that goes back to the accountability piece. At 14 years old, when my father was doing his thing and mistreated my mother, it didn't take a rocket science for me to know that wasn't the right way to go about it. And I had two choices. I could have taken that example and done exactly what he did, or I could have done the right thing. I chose to do the right thing, and that's what I'm asking y'all to do, man, is choose to do the right thing. Don't wait for someone to tell you you're doing wrong, because you know when you're doing wrong.
I think it's a lot of valid points here. You know what I'm saying? There does have to be credential, accreditation, in order to be respected in certain areas. There does have to be people that are going to speak positively in there, but that shouldn't be. It shouldn't be people just waiting to hear that, right? Like, we do have to take the initiative, because it's the same thing. Like, I knew banging was probably going to end up in prison. I knew that, you know what I'm saying, if I sell dope, I'm probably not going to get to Jay-Z level. I'm probably going to end up in his cell, you know what I'm saying? Like, shoot.
So I think the big misconception is like everyone thinks that someone's going to save you. And like, it's going to be another hand that pulls you out of the dirt, man, but it's not. It's going to be your own 2 feet.
Yeah. But we're conditioned for that.
I know.
The welfare system. You know what I'm saying? There's a conditioning to make you believe that somebody is going to save you.
Exactly, and I'm here to tell you, it ain't coming.
It's
Well, 40 told us a long time ago about you. We're not saving you. All right, we're going to close this out, man. You guys all got to say your name one time.
Ebony.
Sam.
It's NI to the K to the junior, the experience. Don't come out. You just go.
Because you was going too far. I
knew you
was after that. You had a whole.
I got a whole.
You had a whole Instagram bio coming out like
all day.
the experience of all time to the quick. Like, all right,
experience, baby.
I feel it.
You met me. You experienced me. You didn't meet me.
I did experience you.
Nice to experience you too, sir.
All right, I love you. I like what you said. Boom, that's it.